Welcome to Breaking Free Authentically, the podcast where we explore what redefining relationships look like through a sex-positive lens. Let's kick shame and guilt to the curb and really start living authentically. I'm passionate about normalizing out-of-the-box ways of designing relationships. There's nothing quite like finding your people and experiencing the freedom of being completely yourself without judgment. I'm your host, Corinne Bedard, your elite relationship designer, and I'm here to guide you in creating the relationship you desire, whether that is a more open one or simply a more empowered one. Join me every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to enjoy the newest episode.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be back. This is episode 9, and wow, it's just going so fast. So I'm really glad that you're here with me today. First, before I get into anything, I wanted to let you know that I have just updated some of my social media, and my Facebook group is now called Breaking Free Authentically, and it is the sex positive relationship community. So it's all about what we talk about in this podcast. So I really would love for you to go and hit the link in the show notes and come and join that community. It's such a great community with amazing people in it. But I would love for you to be there and we can have conversations in that group about this podcast and any questions that you have. So now it's directly linked. It has the same branding and everything. So it's just much more concise and easier, much less confusing for everyone. So please go and join the group if you haven't. I would love to have you there. I'm going to be going live in there and doing some Q&A, but now that things have all gotten figured out and restructured, it's going to be a lot easier. So I'm really excited about that. And I'm really excited about today's guest. So I have another interview today, and it is more of an interview. Last week was definitely more of just a conversation that I'd had way back. And I realized it wasn't very much of a conversation because I had talked a lot in it, but she laughed at me, but it was fine because she was still learning my story at the time. And I know maybe some of you were wanted to hear more from her. So we'll have her on again and we'll ask her more questions and she could do a little bit more talking. So anyways, I love having you guys here and I love being able to share these conversations with you. This one is a very interesting one. It's called Powerlessness to Passion in Relationships. And I think this is a really important topic. A lot of us feel powerless in our relationships. And the passion is gone. And when you have two people feeling powerless, or even just one person feeling powerless, it's really hard to have passion. So we talk about that a little bit. And again, we just basically get to the tip of the iceberg. There's just so much more we could talk about. But it was such a great conversation. I've talked with Moritz before. He's in California. Moritz traveled the world to work on international photoshoots for Armani and Chanel with celebrities and top models like Naomi Campbell and Nicole Kidman. His artwork was published in Vogue magazine at a young age. He had a powerful experience that reshaped his perspective on what's truly important to him, and he dedicated his life to learning everything he could about intimacy in relationships and sexuality. He and his wife have created a family together while moving twice across the globe. Moritz is a visionary mentor for men, and together they teach couples how to be empowered together and have passionate intimacy. So you can see why I really love this man and why I like talking with him, because we are very aligned on the things that we are passionate about. So I want you to enjoy the talk with Moritz. We talked a few weeks ago, and I just so enjoyed our conversation that I had to have him back so you guys could hear what he has to say as well. He has this really cool questionnaire on his website. It's 3 questions to the best sex and connection in relationship. So in the show notes will be the link, but if you go to www.kerkmannhoodcoaching.com, Kerkmann, Kerkmann, Hood, Hood, coaching.com. You will find this 3 questions to the best sex and connection in relationship. And there's actually a mini training in there that you can binge with your partner, or or you can binge it alone if you'd like, but he would like you all to have that as a free gift. So please head over to his website and check it out. When we come back, we are going to just go straight into the interview. I'm not gonna introduce it. I've introduced it here. It's about an hour long, so I would love to just get on with it. So enjoy. At the end, I do ask you to join my Facebook group again, and I do call it the Breaking Free to Be Authentically Me. But just remember, it is now Breaking Free Authentically. There's just the one group, and I would love for you to be a part of it. So, without further ado, enjoy the interview. Please visit our website at www.breakingfreeauthentically.com and subscribe to our mailing list so you never miss an episode. Be sure to leave a review on Podchaser by clicking the link at the top of the page. That would mean the world to me. Finally, I'd love for you to join Breaking Free Authentically, our private sex-positive relationship community on Facebook. All the links will be posted in the show notes. Enjoy the show. Well, hello, Moritz. It's so nice to have you. We've had the privilege of chatting before, and I've really, really enjoyed our talk. So I wanted to bring you on my podcast so that others could hear just some of the great things that you have to say. And I just feel like we're very aligned on a lot of things. And so I wanted to just have a great conversation because this is what I've said I wanted to do. It's important to me to have sex positive conversations about relationships, conversations about sexuality. All these things are very important to me. And I don't think there's enough safe places to listen to these kinds of conversations or to have these conversations in our lives, in the world. You know, it's something that's frowned upon a lot, is talking openly about sexuality. So I'm really excited about this. So can you tell us a little bit about you and where you're from and what you do?
Hey, thank you so much. And likewise, I really enjoyed our conversation too, and I'm super excited to be here with you. And so I have been working with my wife. Actually, we have a combined 20 years of experience working with couples and individuals on increasing intimacy and connection, and really having the right foundation from where you can have great sex in relationships. Mm-hmm. And we both met each other as teachers we used to practice orgasmic meditation, which is still a huge part of what we are teaching and what we are deriving our philosophy and our way of relationship from. And this all kind of started for me. I used to work in the fashion world. I used to live in Paris and in London for around 9 years, working on photoshoots for Vogue and for Chanel and all those kind of like fashion-y brands, which was really amazing. It was like an awesome part of my life. And but there was like always something missing. Like I was always someone in relationship. I think I am sometimes people always look at me because I'm like, yeah, I never really been single for really long periods of time. I always found myself in relationships, and but at that period of my life, there was always something missing for me. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know what it was. And I ended up being really depressed, and I struggled with addiction and with bipolar. And I made a huge shift at some point of my life, and kind of like exited that fashion world and started really going more deeply into figuring out what was going on, and learning everything about intimacy and connection and relationships and how to really go after that. That little glimpse of connection that I could feel was missing in my life.
How do you find that's affected your life?
Man, this is, I would say like it affected everything in my life, because these days I was definitely someone who used to believe that it was all about career and chasing your goal. Like for me, my goal was like to have my name in Vogue magazine, which I achieved really early on, and have my work published there. And that was kind of like one of the major moments where I was like, I saw my name in there, and I was like, oh, I'm still not happy. And like I kept having the repeated experience of like achieving a certain goal, but then realizing like, oh, my happiness was actually not at the end of that rainbow. And that would basically just continue to fuel like more and more dissatisfaction and disappointment, because I was like, so how do I have a fulfilling life? How do I have happiness in my life? And
it's such a common issue. I mean, it's like, I think that we're all looking for that in some way or another, and we are beings that desire connection. And often it's said that women want connection more than men, but I would disagree with that. What do you think? I mean,
I also disagree with that. I think sometimes either doesn't matter from gender, sometimes people aren't aware of it. And I was definitely not aware at some point of my life. Like I remember that the first long-term relationship that I had, which lasted for a few years, that woman, very young woman at that point in my life, she had to convince me to be in a relationship with her. Like that wasn't like I wasn't really chasing that. Like I was chasing sex, and mostly just because I wanted to have that experience, and I wanted to get it over with, so I wouldn't be a virgin anymore, and I wanted to like see how can I have success, how can I be someone in life.
Well, and I would imagine that society and the cultural view of what power is or what's important had a huge impact on that. Would you say that that's the case?
I would say so. And I think it continues to have an influence. It's like still to this day, it's like, I don't know how that's for you, but I wake up with a sense of restlessness, irritability, and a discontentment, right? Like a sense of like, oh, what is wrong today? What is not working yet, or what's not good enough yet? And I think a lot of that stems from from conditioning. I mean, like these days as an entrepreneur, even, you're like, are you yet having enough clients? Are you yet having that? I remember, like, I think like 5 or 8 years ago, everyone wanted to be like unattached and like working from a laptop in the Bahamas or God knows what, right? Like, where did that little dream go to? Like, it was so important at some point. Now it's not. Now it's something else. Like, I don't know what it is. What is it right now? It's like have the followers or something.
Yeah, and I think we're in such a driven society, and I know that you really talked about in our conversation last time about just taking time to like be and still and meditate and just be in the flow of life and who you are. And I think that's so important because we're in such a hustle society, even like, you can make 6 figures as a coach and And it's like, yeah, that's great. But then we just seem to be in this cycle of discontentment. And so I kind of want to talk about that today. We had come up with a really great title last time, and I was like, okay, yeah, that's a good one. So we want to talk about powerlessness to passion in a relationship. And I'm all about empowerment and and sex positive relationships, right? So I'm an empowerment sex positive relationship coach. I'm an elite relationship designer, and I work with couples and individuals, but to work on setting the stage to have an empowered relationship, whether that's redesigning it, whether that's redesigning your mindset so that you can be authentic and all these things. But I think we struggle to live our truth and to be authentic. And I'm going to say, especially as women, we were talking earlier, it might be kind of cool to have, I could speak from the woman's perspective and you could speak from a man's perspective, just to kind of give a little back and forth. But I think that the experience for a woman is very different than a man, whatever your sexuality is, whatever the spectrum is. There's some universal kind of just stereotypes and things that we've been conditioned as men and women, whether we fall into those boxes or not. We've been conditioned to think of things a certain way, and one of the first ones for women, this is this fairy tale of happily ever after and meeting your prince and being rescued and saved. And there's some that balk at that system, and there's some that are like, oh yeah, I need to be rescued. And for me as a Christian woman, so I was very fundamentalist, evangelical Christian, went to Bible school. For those of you who don't know that, if you want to hear my story, go to episode 1, Bible school graduate turned Playboy enthusiast, just to hear that story. But as a Christian woman, submission was everything, to be a good submissive wife, which doesn't have to mean powerlessness, because the way I looked at it didn't mean powerlessness, but it easily can be if you forget that you have intrinsic worth and that you get to have your own life and see the richness of who you are. And I think in a lot of Christian culture, we are told from a young age, men and women, you are nothing without Christ. He had to come and die for our sins, and we had to be forgiven, or we're going to live eternity in hell. We're nothing. He's made us clean. His blood has made us white as snow. All these kinds of things that really indicate. And for so long, I was like, I couldn't live without Christ, and I was told there's no love outside of the church. There's no love in the world, and people don't have joy and all this kind of stuff. And so I was in a cycle of people pleasing and giving up who I am and turning the other cheek. That was the Christian foundation. And then on top of that, what is a perfect Christian wife, or what does a Christian wife look like? And what are these relationship dynamics? And the patriarchy is very strong even now in our relationships and how relationship structures are set up in today's society. And I'm really about breaking the programming. What is the programming? What's the religious and societal programming that we have? And how do we shift that and reprogram so that we can create the lives that we want, without feeling guilty about it, without having shame about it? So with that in mind, I don't remember what I asked you.
No, I have a question for you.
Okay.
So just to be clear, there's I'm not against someone or I'm not against having a purpose or having a thriving career or following, or even being successful at what the society's games are. But I think some of them are really fun, right? But it's there is an underlying component that I think is missing for many people. And when I think of powerlessness, right? So, and here's a question that I have for you as a woman. What does it feel like if you are in a relationship with a man who wakes up in the morning and he is driven by the anxiety to perform and rushes into the office or into his, whether that's a home office or that's an office somewhere else, right? Follows this kind of path to make a living and save the princess, right? Like create the castle for his little queen. But and then comes home in the evening, and whether or not he expects food on the table doesn't really matter. He may be like that far deeply into the macho or not. And then is sort of like tired, and maybe watches Netflix. That's kind of like becoming the routine, and then eventually falling asleep on the couch, right? Um, and then rinse and repeat, right, for the next 30 years or 50 years, God knows how long. How does that make you feel as a woman? That is basically the question.
Wow, that's loaded, and I can feel that in my body. So I tell a lot of my clients, like, where do you feel things in your body when? And I feel this huge lump in my my stomach, the top of my stomach, and I can feel this weight on my chest. Mm-hmm. And that was my experience I just had my 25-year wedding anniversary. I'm separated, but I'm counting it because we still live together. But 25 years of living with a wonderful man, but someone who's very driven. He's American on top of things, right? I'm Canadian, American, and then I'm French, which is a much more laid back culture than the US. US is very independent. And so, you're taught productivity, this, go, go, go. And basically rest and relaxation is wasting time, right? It's not hustle. So yeah, every morning to watch the person you love that you just want to spend some time with and connect with, watch them get up, they're on a schedule. They get up, they do their thing, they have their morning routine, leave the house, go to the office. And for me, barely a word spoken to me. It's just like, that's the drive, right? Get there, get to work, do your thing. And then not being a super people person, being on the phone with people all day is very draining, giving all your energy away at work, coming home, coming in the door, going upstairs to the bedroom and shutting the door.
Right.
And while I'm making supper, and then when supper's ready, call them down and they come and the whole family comes. And then after supper, they either go back to the office or it's, time for reading, alone time for them to just kind of recharge or something, or watching TV or Netflix or whatever it may be. And then it's bedtime. And I basically had to schedule time if I wanted time. And I'm not a schedule person. I'm kind of a, fly by the seat of my pants. I'm very creative. And again, like, I couldn't understand why I was struggling so much, because he was a good guy, like he worked hard, he had integrity, and he's all these wonderful things as a person. But I completely felt alone and ignored. And the only time we really saw him was at dinner time, and I treasured that. And now the kids live away, and now we don't even eat together. Like, we just do our own thing, and it's fine now because there's not the expectation of like you're in a relationship. So there's that. So it's much, much easier it doesn't feel much different, but my feeling is completely different because I don't have that societal expectation of this is what marriage is supposed to be, and this is what it looks like. And I realize now that I was very codependent in so many ways because I was looking for my marriage to validate my worth, I guess, and validate my worthiness. And to me, worthiness is valued on how much someone touches me physically, tells me I'm loved, tells me wonderful things about me, and wants to spend time with me. And when those three things aren't happening, I don't take it.
Who do you become?
Pardon?
Who do you become then?
You become someone who does everything to try to become the person that you think that they want you to be so that they'll notice you.
Right. But like in my experience, what I observe is that goes for a while. And even if like the front is still like the front of a nice woman who's like stuck in her people, right? The people pleasing is, I'm having this nice front, and but then it's like underneath builds a certain rage and disappointment, right?
Well, every month I'd have this huge breakdown and I'd just bawl and cry, and I felt so disconnected and lonely. But I also didn't feel like I had a right to feel that way, because I had so many wonderful things and wonderful children, and you're taught to be grateful and just be positive and happy and this and that.
All the spiritual conditioning comes on top now.
Yes, but also like this toxic positivity culture too comes into play, where you're like, just be happy and just be grateful. And it's like, okay, but can we actually really look at how we're feeling? And I think that powerlessness, that is right there, sort of the picture of powerlessness, right? Like I'm such a strong woman, I'm independent, but I didn't feel like I was number one allowed to, because I kept giving that role to him to make the decisions, and I'm not a very good decision maker. So the decisions I could make, I would tend to not make, because I would be trying to let him lead, but he didn't want to. He wanted me to make decisions, and that was fine with him. He wanted me to be my own person, but I wanted us to do things connected. It was just a very unclear set of rules. And for me, it was very confusing. And I remember walking on eggshells all the time, because I'm very much a face reader, and he's a very serious person. And so if the house wasn't tidy or this or that, like he would be stressed, and I could tell if he was stressed when he came home, he wouldn't say hi to anyone. He would just like walk away. And I knew that he needed his space, and he needed to decompress. So I'd give that to him. But I never felt like I could ask for what I wanted. And I never felt like what I needed was valid and what I needed was important, because he was the most important. Like in a relationship, your partner should be the most important thing, not you. And so
he's the breadwinner, right?
Yeah.
Like he holds a certain position of power, because if he gets knocked off, like we perceive the financial inflow into the household as the thing that is the most important thing on the forefront, at least. And I think subconsciously,
and in this case,
and subconsciously, I don't know if you've ever tried to break out of that one. That is one of the heaviest conditionings to let go of. I think looking at society at the moment, and we have like, even if you look into the conscious community bubble, right? So many people are talking about like waking up to like their full potential, and like being more conscious and being more free and being empowered. Well, what's the one thing that like everybody is like ragingly addicted to at the moment? It's efforting. It's like making money. It's like trying to financially win the upper hand, right? I think like this, it's like one of the, I'm not a financial person, I'm not a financial like coach or anything, but I think that like that pressure is one of the most intense one that wears on relationships, because that power dynamic is really difficult to tackle.
Yeah, it definitely can be hard, especially when like I chose to be a stay-at-home mom. So I always did things like I'm a voice teacher and a piano teacher, and I always did I'm a beauty consultant, and I'm a makeup artist. So I did all these things that I could do with a family, with kids, that was more important. So I never really had a career. And so now, fast forward, all of a sudden we separate, and now the financial responsibility becomes mine for myself. And I've never been in that position before. I was 22 when I got married.
Right.
I was in college. So I moved out of the house to college to a married home. And I always had a breadwinner taking care of me, So this is like a huge wake up call. And like, I wasn't prepared for that, because I had made that something that I shouldn't do or shouldn't want. And yeah, that's been a challenge. But at the same time, like, wow, what an experience of powerful growth to be an entrepreneur. I've always been an entrepreneur, but again, I didn't have to rely on that so much. It was more like fun money or extra money for the family. But now it's like, oh, there's bills to pay and things like that. And these are the pressures outside that are there to get in the way of things. But in terms of relationship, I think it's so easy to fall into a pattern. If it's not the woman, it's one person in the relationship. There's always probably a more dominant person than the other, and one who's usually more of a giver and more of a people pleaser than the other. But at the end of the day, it comes down to, what do you think your roles are, and what's your belief systems, and what's your programming about what relationships should be or shouldn't be, right?
Well, I think it's always a dynamic. I want to briefly, because we illuminated what it's like for the woman, right? To see her man in this pattern, and then you described how she is basically activated into her own conditioning through that, right? And I think for the man, we sort of both looking at the same thing, which is how can the family sort of survive, or how can we make it, which propels us into this rinse and repeat cycle of the hamster wheel. And for the man, it's because I definitely have a lot of people that I work with when they come at first to me, it's he doesn't have attention on me. He doesn't want to connect. Men are unable to connect. Men are unable to feel, right? And then what you said also, and then he comes home in the evening, and first of all, he needs to go and isolate, right? Or the man cave, all of those things are really when I started going into the whole coaching world around connection. Those were all the things that were thrown at my head, right? It's felt very shamey at first. It's the women have something in the realm of feelings and connections. They have the upper hand, and the man is the one who is sort of still the bewildered one. But here's the thing: it's he is just as much trapped in the same loop, right? I don't know, right now we are living in California, and we are paying $4,500 every month just for a house, right? And then there's no schools, and there's no health insurance, and there's no car, and there's no food, right? So it's the experience that most men have is that they are responsible, that they are carrying the weight of having the family survive. And so what you said in the beginning around the slowing down, for me, slowing down and meditating is really the thing that has become a daily routine for me. But why? Because the pressure, the depression, the all of that would set in naturally. Of course it does. It's if you wake up and the first thing is how can I make this family survive by me exerting energy, literally till the point of coming back home, eating some food, and then passing out. And a lot of people have then the help of some substances in order to just because it creates an emptiness in a person, right? If that's all you do is try to hustle and push. And so I think the sex positivity and playing with the idea of what the possibilities of sexuality are, they sort of almost luxury items when you are in that when you are in that place.
Yes.
And so, and then you come home, and what you see is you're looking into the face of a woman who is massively dissatisfied and disappointed. Right? Like, and you are not getting, as a woman, you're not getting the acknowledgement and the approval for the work that you've done, because he's so exhausted that he can't give you anything. And so as a result, you are now mad at him because he can't give you that. And so how does he feel in that moment? It's just like, oh, right, like, why do I even do this for a family that's not even grateful for my work, right? And then all the hopelessness kicks in, and from that hopelessness, you have, I mean, it's self-explanatory to me why there is such a high rate of suicide amongst men, you know? Because it's like, and then like, have something happen like a job loss or like a problem at work. So then everything just turns into hell.
Yeah. And
so that's the predicament we're looking at, really.
Yeah. And I think that I'm glad you're saying this, because like, I'm very big on this idea that, you know, I think women should be empowered. And I think that there's so many beautiful things that we can do as women, and we can be super strong. But I think that there's a shift to like give a big fuck you to men, for one, or to the rest of the world, and be like, talk to the hand. I'm not going to tolerate disrespect or whatever. And it's like, sometimes it's not disrespect. Sometimes it's just survival. Right. And and I think that in order to have healthy relationships, it has to be, like you said, like two people, like understanding the circumstance in which we're in, and the programming that we have, and the expectations that have been put on us, whether imposed by society or whether it's what we have been brought up to believe, or what we think. And I like to check with my clients when we start, like, what did you expect from marriage? Right. And is it meeting your expectations? Like, like, what did you imagine it would be? What's the reason why you thought one day you would want to get married? What did you think it would fulfill? And is that happening? You know? And I think that's such an important question, because, you know, we can come at a relationship thinking that it's supposed to be this way. And so, you know, a couple podcasts away, it was like, what are the relationship myths? And so many of them are like, you know, that one partner can meet all your needs, or that it's your partner's job to meet your needs, you know, or I remember thinking as a woman that I was never going to say no to my husband to sex, because that was my, you know, spiritual service of worship. Like, that was important. Now let's not get that wrong. I am a sexual person. So that was something I was very excited to say yes to. Wow. But turns out that I was the one who had to initiate. It's not the sexual man that wanted me all the time. That was not a thing in my marriage. And no one had told me that the roles could be reversed sometimes. No one told me that men don't want sex all the time, you know? And so I was sorely disappointed by that, because I'd waited 22 years to have sex till I was married. And then I was like, oh, what? Am I not attractive? Am I not, you know, am I not enough? Am I not worthy? And so we have all these ideas of what's tied into things, and we give meaning to things that don't necessarily have that meaning.
I agree. And you are, I would say that, like, there is I like to distance myself completely there from the gender stereotype, because I think there's a very high sexual person. It's usually a person that has a lot of sexual energy that needs to work with it. Yeah. It's literally a need. It's not just like a lusty kind of like thing that you can turn off. It's a need for certain people. And I think I bet that, like, if you have that experience, it's the thought, right? Just the thought pattern of whenever you meet another person that has a high sexual drive, it's like, oh, wouldn't relationship with that person be so much easier? because I don't have to initiate, right?
Mhm.
It's for me the same thing. Like I would say I'm the more I have a higher sex drive than my wife, and we have done so much work on our relationship to come to a place where it's like, oh, this has at some point nothing to do anymore with whether how connected you are, how loving you are, whether you are no, it's actually like there's an actual real thing where like her body requires less than my body.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I have a partner now that I've been together with for a long, and he has a high drive like I do. And so when we first met, it was like really cool because we both initiated the same. But you notice that even though we have the same drives, his need is very different than mine, even in that. And so he's much more sexually driven, like that energy needs to come out of his body. And for me, it's more of wanting a connected energy, a connected sexual, emotional energy, is more where I felt the like if I'm satisfied, like I'm at the point where I'm finally satisfied physically enough that I actually can figure out how often I actually do want it. Like how much is it sexual and how much is it connection that I wanted. And I was under the wrong impression that I just wanted sex all the time, but that's actually not the truth. I wanted connection all the time. And I thought that sex was that connection. So now having a healthy amount of it, I'm like, oh, I'm not the one always initiating. And it's really interesting to like have the tables turned. And now I can kind of put myself in the other shoes and go, oh, okay. So when you don't feel like it doesn't mean you don't love that person. It doesn't mean that they're not attractive to you. It doesn't mean any of that. And sometimes you just need time to yourself. You need to recoup. You need to, like it's 100 different things when if you haven't been on the other side, you don't know.
And that's what you're describing. It's like, that is really such a, like, you have such a advanced level of experience there that you can make these distinctions, that you can be like connected to your body and immediately like, oh, I need some touch, or oh, I need to go over and have a climax right now, or oh, I need to like take it easy, or I need to have a certain food, right? That is really the high level skill where you can, now you're earning the fruits of the work that you have done. But where most people are is, I just feel irritated. And I am upset at my partner and I don't even know why. Like, he's just a fucking irritation right now, and I have been there myself, like we always like, it's always like a thing for like a long time. I heard like, oh, women have so much sexual shame. I think that's actually as well like a gender stereotype. Like, I think both have sexual shame, and any person who is a high sexual energy person will be confronted with shame, right? Like, sometimes I would pick a fight in my relationship about something in the kitchen, and then we would be disconnected for days until eventually I started realizing it wasn't about the kitchen. It was about me not expressing what I wanted in that moment, which was like, hey, would you have sex with me, right? And then we pick these fights so much. Like, we pick the distraction, because that's the thing. It's like our minds distract us in order to not having to penetrate the shame, because that's literally the most uncomfortable spot for most people to live in, is like in the truth of who you are. And so most people blame and bicker and argue with each other over the most ridiculous things, completely unaware what it's actually about. And I'm not saying it's all just about sex, but it usually just creates, like, when there is a repeating pattern of fighting about arbitrary things, and you catch yourself actually, like, I think a lot of people have a little bit of awareness that they're like, oh my God, why am I again finding out this, right? Like, that's like, chances are there's a lot going on that is unexplored.
And I think a lot of it is unmet needs at the end of the day, whether it's a sexual need or not. And I think that it's important to recognize that it's not your partner's job to meet that need. It's your responsibility to communicate that need. It's your responsibility to know how to fulfill that need, whether it's yourself. Like if you just need a release, and it's not necessarily about connection, and your partner is not in that place or whatever, like if you're not full of shame, you can communicate that need and ask, do you want to participate, or shall I go take care of it myself?
Right.
Because I should be able to take care of my own need. Whether if I need a hug and there's nobody around, I can sit there and cry about it, or I can, hold myself, massage myself, or cuddle with my puppy, or have a friend and cuddle with them. Like, figure out how are some of the things that you can meet your needs on your own. And then what do you absolutely need someone else to fulfill that need for? And I have my clients do like a need assessment, and then write how can I fulfill this myself, and what do I absolutely need someone else to fulfill, and there's a lot of sexual needs that you can fill by yourself, but you can't fill the need of like skin to skin, body contact, emotional, energetic connection with just yourself. So you get to evaluate what it is that you need, and be really clear and communicate that to yourself first without shame. Right. And then be able to communicate it to your partner. And that's your responsibility. It's not your partner's responsibility to try to read your mind and meet that need. And you can't get frustrated if they're never meeting that need when you don't even realize what it is that you need. And right. I think that's important, because we do put a lot of responsibility on our partners sometimes. And that falls into sort of that powerlessness. It's right, easy totally. To do that, right? Like, if I feel powerless in myself, if I don't love who I am, if I don't feel like I'm worthy, I need them to initiate that in order for my worth to be validated, or I need them to tell me I'm beautiful or that I'm sexy in order to feel validated. But if I start with that with myself, they get to say those things. Those things don't just keep me in survival. They're like, whipped cream on top. They get to add to my joy in life, rather than just being upset that they never notice.
I agree. And I would add, so I like to make the distinction between being responsible for or being responsible to, like, because I think
let's talk about that. Yes.
Because a lot of men, so like you say, like, oh, I can cuddle my puppy, or I can give my friend a hug, right? And I think a lot of men, when they come into this, a lot of men that I work with, they don't have a friend that they can hug, or they don't have the luck of having a puppy, right? Because they're coming from the battlefield of isolation and lone wolfmanship, right? Like, they didn't have the time to have a puppy, or they just never actually had the openness in their life that they still managed to keep friends that they still hug, right? These days I hug men every day, like I have my brothers around me who keep me fueled, right? Like, that's so important thing. But that's an alien concept to most men. They don't have that. Yeah. And I have compassion for that, because I've been in that place. And so when you are in that place and you run under the idea that your partner is your life's person that will provide for you, right? This is the old idea of what relationship is. Like, right. I am marrying this person, so I will be loved by this person. So I will be taken care of by this person. Then what happens is you feel entitled to it. Like, there's entitlement. It's like, well, my woman doesn't want to have sex with me. Like, how dare she, right? Like, those are her marital responsibility, right? And where I am these days with my partner is she is absolutely not responsible to give me anything. But what we like to practice is we like to, and I think it goes very much along the lines what you said, is like we practice knowing what is my need and then asking for it. And through that, because most couples don't even know how to love their partner. They don't know it. They don't know how to love their partner well. So, and then it happens what you say, that like we expect that the partner reads our minds, which is impossible. Like you're setting yourself up for the worst relationship, full of expectations and disappointment. But now I'm in a place where I'm like, I get to say like, hey, here, I'm going to make an extreme example. Hey, would you suck my cock for 5 minutes? And my wife gets to say, yes, I would like to. Or, no, not right now. And sometimes, like I have to take the risk that she may be in her people pleaser. Not my that's not my responsibility. And I actually provide her the experience where she can find out whether she's enjoying it or not.
And that's so important. And the other thing is that you can have a negotiation then, right? Like if you made that known, now, am I responsible to make you come? Like, is that part of the responsibility, or do you just want that feeling? Do you want that connection with me? And do you want that to get you started? Can we clear that up? Because if it's a literal 5 minutes, I can probably do that. If it's to completion, I'm not sure if I can devote that much time and feel that kind of pressure.
Right. You don't know how long that even takes. It may take take an hour.
Right. And everybody's different, so I think it's like once you start having the conversations, you can decide, like a no doesn't have to be a complete no, and a yes doesn't have to be a giving up of yourself, right? Like you can negotiate. And I'm so about renegotiating things, and let's negotiate the terms so that we can understand. And back to your sense, like it's your responsibility to communicate your need. I just wrote like my first chapter in my book.
Before you go there, because I want to hand away like a little practice exercise there.
Good.
Because what I would say to my clients at that spot is like, set a timer.
Yeah.
Actually set a timer for 5 minutes and agree to that. I call it a container.
Yeah, I love that.
Small container, and when the timer has gone off, because that way, like you have to remove the goal, because it's that the goal is what really kills it.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. I love that idea. I love that idea, because I think that, some of us want to please our partners, but there's certain things we don't enjoy as much as others. And so, even like setting a time limit, like I remember my ex-husband wanted to set a sort of a time limit of how long he had to sit and talk with me. And I would feel so like almost violated by that, because to me, that was a value, like it was it determined my value, whether he wanted to spend a long time with me or not a long time. But to him, it was like, he couldn't relax unless he knew there was an end time, and then he could be fully in the moment. So it's just learning those kinds of things, right? Or like your blowjob example is perfect. I love that. Because sometimes that is a difficult task for women, right? Like, and
that word safety there is like, it's so important. Into it. Like if there's no clear container attached to certain things, we cannot actually let go and enjoy. Same for the woman, right? Like if she has to work to make him come in that moment, then that's all that's on the mind, right? And then it's about speed, and it's about friction, it's about like harder and like all of those things. When that is all taken off the table, and you literally just like 5 minutes, I get to do with this cock whatever I want. You can actually start to enjoy it in all different ways.
It's so true. It's so true. I love that. I wanted to go back to, so I just started writing a book, and in the first chapter, so the book is about why aren't we why don't we live in our authenticity? Like, what are the things holding us back from being authentic, in our relationships and our sexuality? Like, what are these things that are holding us back? And the first chapter is talking about we don't even know what we want, or we don't even know our needs, and so a lot of us have grown up being told what to eat and how to eat and what times to eat at, how long to sleep, how to think, who our friends should be, what we're going to study. I mean, we are kind of given that information. And a lot of times people haven't even really thought about what they really need or want in their lives. They haven't had that opportunity. And they've also been taught that other people's needs are more important than theirs. So they're much more aware of other people's needs than their own. So we can see that when we get in a relationship, how we'd feel so unempowered because we don't even know how to ask for what we need, because we don't even know what we need.
Right.
And there's so much shame about even needing something. Like, you're needy. You don't want to be needy, quote unquote needy. And there's such a fear, especially as women. You do not want to be emotional or needy or too much, because, no man's going to want you. So if you do the things, if you just do for them what they need. And I mean, how many women are, especially from like our parents' generations, are just in relationships where they're just walking on eggshells all the time, trying to appease their husbands so that they're not upset, and they don't feel like they're allowed to sit and rest. And here we are, this new generation. It's like the total opposite. I don't have to do anything I don't want to do. My life is my own. And I think there's this nice in-between balance where you said, like, it's not my responsibility. Your happiness is not my responsibility. But here's the other thing. Your happiness gets to be I get to have joy in taking part in your happiness.
Right.
And if we think of it that way, right?
Responsible for rather than responsible to.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of, I know one of the things that kind of went south with my marriage was this whole idea that, well, I'm not responsible for your happiness. You're responsible for your emotions. You're responsible for this. You're responsible for that. And that's all great. But if you're never even inputting into my happiness or my world, then I feel very isolated. And it's a very big challenge to try and be happy on my own when I'm constantly in anxiety and not knowing if I'm loved or if someone cares about me. And so I got into this very depression, anxious spiral. I've never had addiction issues, but I could see in that moment how it would be so easy to want to numb that pain of not feeling like you're living up to someone's standard, or that you're not enough, or that you're not able to be everything that someone expects you to be. And I know it's both sides that feel this way, but like in my moment, I just was spiraling down and I felt so hopeless. And I think it's because I had devoted my whole life to someone else's needs rather than my own.
Right.
And I didn't feel I was allowed to ask for my own needs.
Yeah. And I think that's like, I see that happening a lot at the moment, where I think a lot of people who are starting to see this swing in the opposite direction from being highly depending on their man or their partner or God knows who, and then swing all the way into this hyper individualism, hyper independence. And I mean, you would ask, like, what's wrong with that? Like, not nothing necessarily. But again, I also work with women who are in this kind of phase. I have one client who is in this phase for really many, many years. And I like to expand. I like to play little games. Sometimes you're like, so put yourself 30 years from now and you haven't changed this. Right? And you are approaching your 60s or 70s and you're still this like hyper individual person I need nobody,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then how will you feel? And I think there is a certain missing out, because relationship holds a potential when we exit this extreme dependency, but also when we don't swing on the other side and are like, well, he's doing his thing, I'm doing my thing, and we don't have any touching points. But when it becomes rather a dance of connection where we try to, I like this, there's a meme with like a bunch of really like bony people, and they all have really long spoons.
Oh, yes.
Right? And they can't really feed themselves, but they can feed each other.
Mm-hmm. I love that one.
That's so true, right? Like there is
I would call that interdependence. Would you agree?
Yeah, interdependence. And then like my aim with the people that I work with, or the people that my wife and I work with, because we coach them together, is actually tapping into the potential of entering flow together as a couple. Entering, like we like to call it orgasm, right? Like it's not the orgasm that society has, which we call climax, but orgasm as in there is an energy, there's a telepathic field, a third that you create as a couple. And that, or if you talk in religious matters, okay, like it has nothing to do with religion, but like if you are tapped into a higher consciousness together, into God together, right? And you are starting to have a purpose and a shared energy bank account that you are trying to serve together, right? Because then you're starting to tap into other areas where you get to serve community together, where you get to raise children in a healthy way together, where you get to create like for us, it's like a beautiful, healthy land and house around us that's like full of nourishment, where other people can come in, and it's like a haven for other people, where it's like joy, you know, like where there's celebration. That's really where I like to head, rather than just how do we fulfill our needs. Like, how do you actually eventually get full together that it spills out onto others?
Yeah, I like that. And I think there's so much shame about needing anything and being codependent. And I think like we are humans, we are beings that need connection, we need interconnection, and not being solely dependent on someone, but being dependent on and allowing yourself to be vulnerable with other people, and allowing them to input into your life and you input into their life. It's like, that's where passion comes from, right? Like we're talking about powerlessness to passion. And it's like, passion comes when you feel safe enough and connected enough to be your full self with that person that you love. And you can sink into their arms in grief sometimes. You can sink in and be like, I can't carry this on my own. I'm not expecting you to carry it, but I know you're there for me. That's beautiful. And when they choose to input into your life on a regular basis, and when you choose to input into their life, I think the difference there is that it's no longer an expectation. It's something that you both daily choose.
It's an offering.
Yeah. And I think like with my boyfriend now, we live like 2 hours apart. And I really love the fact that we do in a lot of ways, because, and you know, like we both have similar views on ethical non-monogamy and just the beauty of loving other people or loving outside of our relationships is not necessarily a bad thing. But unless we have these relationship skills honed in, we're just going to make a mess of other relationships. Like another person's not going to fill a void that we don't know how to fill, or know how to access or talk about. Right. So if we're not able to be vulnerable with our partner, or feel safe with our partner, or create safety for them, we're certainly not going to be able to create safety for someone else. It's not going to get better unless we learn who we are and what we bring to the table, and that we have our own responsibilities in loving, and we get to choose. So my boyfriend lives 2 hours away. It's not an expectation that I go see him every 2 weeks. It's not an expectation that he comes see me. We choose that. We choose to talk to each other daily. We choose to keep in touch and share because we want to. And I love that. There's no like contract making us do that, you know, and we continually choose each other. And that's beautiful. And I think that we should adopt this idea that someone could leave at any point. They are free to leave, but they choose to stay. And I choose to stay because I value your input in my life. I value giving into your life. I value what we create together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that a lot of us are losing that with going to the opposite side of complete independence. We're losing community and just this sense of connection with people. And to me, that's just a travesty because I mean, connections are everything. I mean, even the conversation, we've had one conversation together and I feel like I could trust you to talk to you about things that are important in my life. And I barely know you, but we took time to connect. Right. And my people, my community, the people in my world, that's who I have in my life. And that's who I select are people that value me as a person, that respect me, that I can coexist with and co-create with, co-interact with, right? It's not just a one person thing where it's like, well, I'll just do me and you just do you. You get to do you, I get to do me, but we also get to be we.
I agree. And I fully agree. And that's the thing. That's like what it like touches back into that, like when it starts to spill over, right? Like it is really a work that like starts with myself. Mm-hmm. Like I can look at my patterns. I can look at where, even if I'm that man who's like still entangled in that like 9 to 5, right? Mm-hmm. I can look at how do I show up here? How am I overspending my energy by chasing after these goals? Like how can I start to bring some of that back and put it into the bank account of my own growth? And it's so I can start to come back home and, you know, now I understand, like you want my acknowledgement, right? That is something that's important to you. Mm-hmm. At that stage of your life, that is really what's needed, right? Mm-hmm. Now at the stage that I'm in, though we do go back and forth, it may not be as needed. My wife may have more self-esteem, a stronger self-esteem, where she doesn't need me to acknowledge her as much anymore. Mm-hmm. But I still know that, and I still can work on that and bring that back home and slowly make a move out of these things and build these kind of like things that we're talking about, which include like community.
Build. That's the word right there, right? Like it's about building connections, little connections, and staying connected and putting effort into building something.
Right. And
sometimes that's not always easy. Building isn't always a simple job. And I'm not always good at every part of building something, but I give it my best effort, and it doesn't have to be perfect. You know, and as the receiver, we need to acknowledge the imperfection and we need to acknowledge the effort, or someone's not going to give the effort anymore, you know. So we are running out of time. I can't believe how fast this has gone. Is there any, if someone wants to, would like to talk more with you or work with you, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah. So at the moment, what I recommend is that you watch, I have just created a micro training for people. That's super fun, 30 minutes, with a few exercises where you can pinpoint where you are and where you want to go. And it's called the 3 questions to have the best sex and connection in relationships. And as you probably just listened to everything, it's not so much about the goals of that, but it is about creating a life where you can have those naturally pour out of you.
Mm-hmm.
And you can find that on our website, and that is KerkmannHoodCoaching.com. Would be great if you could put a little.
I will put that in the show notes for sure.
Yeah, so we put that in the show notes underneath.
Yeah, awesome.
Check it out. It's completely for free, and there is a little gift at the end of this micro training where you can find the next step.
Nice, very nice. Well, I love that you do this work with people and focus on intimacy and sexuality, and I do that as well, but in a different way. And so if someone's interested in coaching, in figuring out what's holding you back from your authenticity, or where your sexual shame is stuck and all these kinds of things, like, it's about shifting that program and getting to a place where you can really live in your authenticity. And that's just one of the things that I do, and just redesigning relationships. And I know that we're hopefully going to work together in the future and create some really cool sort of meshed things.
I would love that.
Especially you guys, you have to hear about this. The, would you call it orgasmic meditation, or orgasm? Was it orgasmic meditation?
Yeah, orgasmic meditation. It's a partner practice.
Yeah. And I don't know, some of you may have heard it called the 15-minute orgasm. I have heard that on like swinger podcasts, like way back when I started listening to Playboy Radio and different things. I was like, what is this 15-minute orgasm? And then when I talked with him, I was like, oh, you actually teach it? Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I want to learn all about it. So yeah, we definitely have more to talk about for sure.
Yeah, that's something that's interests you. Well, for sure, feel free to reach out. My wife and I both teach it, and she has been working actually with the founder of this practice for I think like more than 10 years together.
Might have to come to California and visit you.
Yeah,
this would be really cool.
So we have space here for sure.
Or Canada, you can come to Canada too. Anyways, thank you so much, Moritz. It's been great chatting with you. And hopefully you guys have learned a little bit about powerlessness to passion. There's so much more we could say about this. We just sort of touched the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this. But we could talk all day and never get to the bottom of it. So if you have any questions for either of us, reach out. I'd love for you to join my community, Breaking Free to Be Authentically Me. And you can find all the links to my websites and my community in the show notes. So I will see you next week, but thank you so much. And thanks for being with us, Moritz. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Wow. That was such a great conversation with Moritz. I'm so glad that I had him on to share so much of that. Let me know in the Facebook group what you think of these conversations, and let's talk about them. I just think we need to have more of these conversations. So I'm going to bring them to you. We're going to do more of these conversations. I'm going to let you go. Have a wonderful week. Don't forget to go check out KerkmannHoodCoaching.com. The links will be in the show notes, and you can download his 3 questions to intimacy and the mini training that he's got. So go check that out. That's exciting. And go check out my Instagram. Come join our group. I would love to have you. It's going to be full of amazing things, and we're just going to have a lot of fun in there. So let's be real. Let's be vulnerable. Let's be authentic, and let's live our lives. Remember, when it comes to sex positivity, authenticity is the key. Have a great week. I love you. Mwah. Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at Corinne Bedard Coaching, and you can visit my website at CorinneBedard.com. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to give it a like and share it with your friends. I'd be so grateful if you could help by giving us a 5-star review on Podchaser or iTunes. Don't forget to subscribe to our mailing list to be kept up to date about upcoming episodes and exciting news. Just visit our website at breakingfreeauthentically.com and scroll down to subscribe. You can also email me anytime. I'd love to hear from you. Send your messages and questions to Kareen@KareenBedard.com. Are you a part of my Facebook community yet? Join us in Breaking Free Authentically. It's where you will find this sex-positive relationship community. I'd be thrilled to have you be a part of this community with me. All the links will be in the show notes, so don't forget to check it out. Remember, when it comes to sex positivity, authenticity is the key. Have a great week.